good morning, everyone. I have been thinking about this idea for quite a while, and I wanted to make a box to hold a bar of soap in. And I do love the Perfectly Posh soap. The oils in it, it makes your skin just feel great, and the peppermint, don't get twisted, it has peppermint oil in it, and it's just a great soap. So I wanted to make a box to give this as a gift. So I've been thinking about this for a while. So this is what we are going to make today. So first of all, you're going to need some supplies. You are going to need some dies. Now, these are the 2 dies that I used for this box. They came from the Stitch So Sweetly dies, and that is this one right here, and it's the largest of the scalloped rectangles. And then this one right here comes from the rectangular dies, and it's the 3rd one from the largest. Okay, so those are the dies that you'll need. And then you will need to have some paper. Now, the paper that I'm using today comes from the 'Tis the Season paper. And, sorry for the crackling sound. You will need 2 of whatever you want. Well, actually, you'll need 3, and I'll explain why. So, you will need 2 pieces, because if you'll notice, I decorated the sides. So you'll need 2 pieces for the sides, and then you will need 1 piece for the top right here. So I think I'm going to use, I think I want a different top this time. Let's see, which one do I want to use? Make them a little different. Oh, yes, let's use this one for the top this time. Okay, so we're going to use this one for the top this time. And for the sides, I will use the same red and white with the plaid stripe in the middle. Okay, so that's the paper that we'll need. And I can put these away. Those were left over from the sample that I made. You will also need some paper. So we will need some... we will need some cherry cobbler. And let me get out some cherry cobbler, because this right here is made with the cherry cobbler cardstock. I felt like the DSP, the double-sided, the designer series paper, which is double-sided, it's a little bit thinner, and I wanted it to have a thicker piece up under it. So that's why I went with the cherry cobbler. And it's a beautiful coordinating color. And then you will also need, so here is the cherry cobbler, and then you will also need the Whisper White Thick to make the card base. I actually ran out of Whisper White Thick, so I am just going to use regular Whisper White, but that will be perfectly fine. I just like to use the Whisper White Thick, if at all possible, for the card bases. Okay. So we have all of our supplies together. Oh, one more thing is some ribbon. And here's the ribbon on the top right here. So you'll need about 12 inches of ribbon. Now the ribbon is real red, but I actually think because of the sheerness of the ribbon, it works well with the cherry cobbler. I think it's very complimentary. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to cut our box base. And to start with, you need to cut your box. Let me open my cutting blade up here. And we need to cut our box at 6 3/4 by 9 3/8. Okay, so those are your dimensions for your box. And now 6 3/4. And then you can just set those leftover pieces aside. I generally use them for layering pieces or for sentiment pieces on cards because that's a pretty good dimension for that. Okay, now you want to push your cutting blade aside because now we are ready to score. And we are going to score on the long side at 1 3/8, 4, 5 3/8, and 8. I'm writing that down for you. Okay, there are your dimensions for that. So let's start. So rotate your paper so you have the long side at the top of your scoreboard. And you can use a regular scoreboard, but I have a scoring tool on here, so I'm just going to use the scoring tool on here. So I need it to be 1 3/8. Make sure I've lined that up. Score. And then 4. And then 5 3/8. And then 8. Now you'll rotate to the short side where you will then cut at 1 3/8 again. Not cut, sorry, score. Don't cut or you won't have a box. And now at 5 3/8. And that should give you a piece on this edge that is also 1 3/8. Okay, so now looking at your box base, what you're going to do is you're going to cut up to that score line, okay, on both sides. Now, I've already done that on this piece right here, just to save time. Okay, here we go. You can see my box space, and I'm just going to move this aside. Okay, so here is my box base, and when I cut it, here's some tips for you. When you cut your box base, the shorter pieces here, here, and here, you want to cut straight and then cut at an angle so that way your box will close better. Now, you want to use that DSP that you pulled out earlier, and you're going to cut 2 pieces on the side here. The 2 pieces need to be, the red pieces are 3 7/8 by 1 1/4. And then the shorter piece on top is 3 7/8 by 1/2. And then these pieces right here are 2 1/2 by 1 1/4, and then 2 1/2 by 1/2. So those are these pieces right here. So I already cut those just to save a little time, and now I'm going to glue these down before I actually assemble my box. I like to use the multi-purpose glue, but you can use whatever glue you wish. And I'm going to kind of center it so that there's a little bit of the sides that are white, kind of framing it. I like both sides of this paper. It's so pretty. Okay. That one I'm going to center. Try to center it in the middle. I'm actually going to wait to adhere the other smaller strips until after I have my box glued together because I want to make sure I line those up evenly. So I'm just going to do one for now. So this part represents the top of the box, and this side represents the bottom of the box. That's why we aren't going to decorate it. You can use color cardstock if you wish, but I was working with white as my practice one earlier, so I guess I just stuck with white. Okay, now it's time for the box assembly, and hopefully everything is cut correctly. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start with the base, and I'm just going to add a little glue. Now you can use tear-in tape on this as well, but I find if I use the multi-purpose glue and if I just hold it for a minute, that it will work just fine. And then I'm going to get this one, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that one in. And I try not to have it too tight on the edges. I don't want to pull it in too tightly. So I just kind of use my finger, and it actually adheres pretty quickly. Okay. Now I notice that this piece is slightly taller, so I may have to trim that just a little bit. We'll see in a minute. Go stick a little glue in there. Okay, there we go. See how that's sticking up a little bit? I'm not sure if I'm too happy about that, but it's not on this side. So human error. So I'm just going to trim that down just a little bit. Coming from this way. Okay, that's better. Okay, now let me hold that down a little bit longer on that corner. Now for the top, I'm just going to adhere these like this. Got some paper on my glue. Okay, there we go. It's been so busy at work and with life in general that I really haven't had much time to craft. So I said I'm going to take a few minutes this morning and craft. I need to put a little bit of glue on the edge there. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to push that down. Okay, and that fits great. I'm really happy with that. Okay, so now that I have that down, I can see to line up this piece. I'm looking here, so I can line that up so that it matches the other side. And that might not make a difference to some people, but I like things to match up. I didn't match the plaids up because I didn't feel like that would be as noticeable. Okay. Okay, so there is my box, and I'm just going to open it up to give all my flaps a minute to dry, and I'm so happy with how that looks. Okay, now it's time for the piece that we have here and the bottom piece. So it kind of looks like a book a little bit, and for that, what I need to do is I already cut out this portion right here, okay, which that's this. I already cut this out, and then the bottom one, okay? But I need to cut out the scallop out of the candy cane to fit on top of it. So let's get out the new die cut machine, and I'll show you how that works. Oops, sorry for the noise. Shh, I know. Okay, I'm getting fussed at over there. So here is the new Stampin' Up machine, and it tells me, and on here it tells you what layers to use and how to use them. Okay, so for this is the magnetic cutting plate. This is plate 5. So to use the magnetic cutting plate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the base, which is a 1, and then I'm going to use this number 2 plate Then I will use the number 5 plate. And then on top of that, I will use the number 3 plate. Okay, so this is going to be loud, I'm sorry. But what I'm going to do is I just put my paper on here, and I'm just going to cut it out of the paper. Okay, and I want the candy canes going up, so that's why I cut the paper in that direction. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it's so loud. Okay. And there we have our beautifully cut top. Isn't that fabulous? Okay. I still have my old die cutting machine. I use my new one with my magnetic plate, and I use my old one for embossing. So I still have both of them, and I use both of them. I just found it was easier to have one for die cutting and one for embossing folders. That makes it a little bit easier. I'm not having to switch plates in and out all the time. Okay, so now I am ready to glue the bases, and what I did is I actually glued the base on last. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the top first. So for the top of my box, I need to first, I want to put some ribbon around this before I glue it down. And I think probably about 12 inches. I usually don't measure ribbon, I just eyeball it. It usually turns out all right. Okay, but I think about 12 inches. And then there are probably a lot of other ways you could do this where you aren't wrapping it all the way around. Some people think that wastes ribbon, but I don't think it wastes that much ribbon. But you can put your ribbon on however you wish. And I just kind of did it in the middle. But you put your ribbon on how you like it. And there we go. Yep. Okay, turn that down a little bit. And then I like how that ribbon it's just so pretty. And then let's trim the ends just a little bit. Get my ribbon scissors. There we go. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So now this is going to be adhered to this one. And of course I'm using candy canes because my soap is peppermint. It is one of my favorite soaps. Okay, I'm just lining that up across the back. You could use tear and tape for this if you wished, but I find liquid glue works just as well. And then let me line that up. The bottom rectangular layer is not an exact fit for the scalloped layer, but I think it works fine. Okay, and I'm just going to press that down a little bit. Oh, that paper is really pretty with that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to use tear and tape at this point. And here we go. And I like to go down each of the edges and then what I consider the top and bottom, I guess you could say, for my tear and tape. Which I don't tear, I cut, as you can see, although you can tear it, but you do what works for you. That's what I say. Okay, so now I'm just going to peel this leftmost edge. So now when I place this down, I don't want it to actually be centered on here. I kind of want to have some of it overhanging on the right-hand side. So I'm going to eyeball it before I set it down, because once you set it down, it's down, and like that. Okay, so now I'm going to reach in there and peel up the top and bottom pieces, and I'm going to kind of hold it up with my finger. I know people use all kinds of gizmos for this, but I just find my fingernails work just fine. And then I'm also going to get that other edge. Then I'm just going to smooth it down, and there it is. Perfect. Okay, now for the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing, except this time I'm going to try to eyeball it and line it up with the top piece. Now, if you'll look at this, you'll notice that one side has more definition in the stitching than the other side. So looking at it, I tried to make it so that that stitched edging is seen from the top. So I actually, you might consider that putting it on upside down. I'm not sure, but that's just what I wanted to do. Same thing. Okay. There we go. Smooth those down. And okay, so now I am going to hold my box, eyeball it with the top piece the best that I can before I set it down, because once you set it down, it's not going anywhere. The tear and tape is amazing. Okay. Let's see if we can get that last piece. And voila, there is my box. You can use a tag punch if you want, and you can cut a little tag to go on it, and then you could cut a smaller tag to put a little saying and then wrap a little piece of twine around that if you wish. That's completely up to you, or you can put a big tag on it, whatever fits your style. But there you have it. There are my candy cane boxes to hold some peppermint soap. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's crafting, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.